Wednesday's episode ended with a cliffhanger. We said that we were going to be visiting the Sweater Detective, and here we are. We are in front of Setesdal's Museum, and the Sweater Detective is in the building, waiting for us. But before we go in, we have Maria Björkroth, who works here at the museum, to tell us a little bit about the museum and your work here.
Yes, welcome to Setesdalsmuseet.
Thank you.
We have 12 venues, 200 kilometers spread out.
Yeah.
And this is one of our venues. This is our permanent exhibitions. We celebrate here. We celebrate really the culture, heritage of Setesdal and the immaterial cultural heritage. Because so much of this is not written down. It's not that you can cope with it just reading things. You have to understand the tradition. And that's what we celebrate in this museum. So we have exhibitions about the folk costumes of the area. I'm working with the textile and costumes in the museum. So I should be the expert. I'm trying to learn at least. And then we also have housing this special exhibition for Anemo Sundby. And we are very proud to show all her, so much of her collection, but it's not all her collection.
No. She's got a lot of stuff. So we can't wait to meet the detective, and we can't wait to see the exhibit, so let's go.
Let's go.
Run.
Come on.
Run. Hi everybody and welcome back to our YouTube channel. We are as always your hosts Arne and Carlos.
And we are in Setesdal. We are doing a road trip this year, and September month is Setesdal's month. We're going to be learning a lot about the cultural and heritage of this beautiful valley in the south of Norway. Today we are at the Setesdal's Museum, and we have an old friend slash relative here with us. It's Anemo Sundby. Anemo Sundby, she is a government grant holder. She is the recipient of the King's Medal of Merit. You are known as the Sweater Detective because of your unique ability and curiosity that leads you through these strange little paths to discover all these interesting facts about these sweaters and knitting traditions, cultural history. You've been researching. I mean, come on. If there's something you don't know about knitting, it's not worth knowing. That's my opinion. Right, Arne?
I agree.
Oh, thank you.
Totally.
And we have to get the whole relative thing out of the way first before we start.
Yeah. Where do we start? Well, my grandmother's cousin was married to your grandfather's half-brother. That makes my father and you second.
Yes.
No, you have second cousins in common.
Well, I will be your fourth cousin.
Yeah.
And my mother will be your father's third cousin.
Yeah, that
It's coming closer.
Yeah.
still we're siblings.
Yeah.
Siblings.
Yes, we've known Anemo for quite some time, and actually, Anemo, that's you're gonna have to tell the story. How did you meet Arne the first time?
Yeah, Arne knocked at my door at 17th of May. That was the National Day, and we used to eat ice cream on that day.
And that's when you knock on people's doors.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of rude.
Yeah.
So we waited for a family that had been living in our house before, invited them for ice cream. And when Arne and his mother knocked at the door, we invited them for ice cream. And you were 17.
Did he eat the whole thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think he
No,
enjoyed ice cream.
I'm polite.
Yeah, but you're also known for a sweet tooth.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
But when he was a student at ESMOD and I was going to have a lecture there, he came to me and said, I know you. I have been eating ice cream in your house.
Yeah.
So that was the second
That's
time.
the second time.
And after we have this my grandfather connection.
Yeah.
And that's not in Setesdal, that's in Gausdal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where I grew up.
Exactly,
So we have a
yeah.
link in the other.
In the other valley. And then our paths have crossed many times. You went your way doing your research and all this incredible work. You have an amazing story that we can't wait to hear more about, and we can't wait our viewers to learn more about who you are. And then we went in our own way and did our designs, and we've met throughout the years here and there, mainly in the south of Norway.
Yes, and even in the opera in Oslo.
Yeah.
Yes.
You remember?
We remember, yeah. And we had plans to go to Japan together to
Yeah.
tour in Japan. Unfortunately, COVID put a stop to that for now, but hopefully we'll be able to go
Yeah.
in the future.
And we love all your books because there's a
thank you.
huge, what you call that, like a well of
Wealth.
inspiration. There's a
Yes.
lot of inspiration in those books.
It's a deep well, and I have
Deep
been
well.
doing a
And
deep
you've been digging.
dive
Yeah.
into it.
We, a lot of our viewers will know who you are by name because we have introduced them to your books in the past and talked a lot about you and about the work that you do. And it is very inspiring to know more about, as soon as we read one of your books and we kind of start looking at the way you work, it's very inspiring because you really do go unexpected ways to find out things about this extreme tradition and wealth that we have in Norway. So we really want to know, Annemor, how it all started.
How did
Should
it
I start now?
Yes.
Start now.
Okay. Well, I am educated a weaving teacher and a textile designer. And I, as all Norwegians, started knitting about 5 years old. So, but it happened when I had been a weaving teacher for almost 10 years that I wanted to close down most weaving classes in Norway. And that was because I said there was no employment for weavers at that time. So I was going to small industry to ask if they could teach me or train me how to use machines, because I had the idea of if we could learn more to cooperate with small industry, we had a better chance for hand weavers to go into industry. So, and to get more time consuming equipment that could save time, I mean.
Okay.
So I went to a little small wool mill called Torridale Tweed, and a quilting mill. And the mill was recycling wool. And when I met the man and asked if I could have half a year practice, he said yes at once, but he gave me one condition. That was I had to buy the mill first. So overnight I was a mill owner.
Wow.
And in this mill that was used all worn out material of knitted goods. That was everything that you could think of from inside to outside that had been wearing on the body. So this was shredded up to fiber, and the fiber was also for wool quilts, and it was for mattresses, sleeping bags, and if it was good enough fiber quality, it could be spun to blankets and tweed. It was called Torridale Tweed. So my tweed is here. So you will see after that is what is the rag pile was meant for.
So we're talking recycling here in the highest kind of level.
Yeah, because most wool mills at that time had to use material of knitted worn out. After the Second World War, they had not enough wool in Norway for the industry.
Okay.
So that was a reason why the Norwegian textile industry could run. And they also made things that was better quality even than new material.
Yeah.
Because like recycled wool, they can absorb more what do you call it?
Humidity?
Humidity. And also it's not shrinking so much when you use it in like sweaters for seamen. So many things was better by using recycled material.
Hmm.
But after Second World War, it was a lot of things that had been used, like this, been used as a sweater, knitted, handspun, cables. It was quite, time-consuming to make it. And then Second World War, short of material, they turned the sweater upside down and ended up as warm underwear.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a nice.
So that's a way of, and a lot of my things seems to be used and reused, and at last, I mean, nobody could even use it. So you see this underwear has been a V-neck sweater and ended up as a soft underwear. So that was in the beginning. I was a textile designer and not even so into knitting. I was more for designing for industry. And it came an exhibition in Norway sent out by the Norwegian Folk Museum that all counties in Norway should add their traditional knitting into this exhibition. And some ladies from outside Kristiansand came and asked, do you have anything for this exhibition? And I said, well, please go into the back room, the storing room. And they came back with eyes and said, oh, you need to dive deeper into this because you have more than any museum.
Wow.
So at that time, museum had the best. I had what people had been wearing out. And I had what was used in everyday life. It was not for the finest things that at that time museums looked for. So then the idea came that I need to collect. So I started, and in the beginning I collected animals, started collecting reindeer, and suddenly I saw that dogs was quite popular, and reindeer. I was thinking this is our national animal, but I realized that they are used in all different mythologies, like what was bringing back from the dream world or from message to you from the underworld or from your dreams. And stars, dogs, moose, and you had the little well and the sun, so the moose in sunset.
Very traditional kitsch.
Yeah, and so after collecting this, I saw that I need to store it. So I started storing it into my knitting machine.
Oh, cool.
So the birds and the rabbits and dogs and all the moose, reindeer and deer.
Oh, this one is beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, these are really nice.
And it was popular in the 20s and 30s, and then also this film of the Laplander Sami people was popular.
Lille Laila.
Laila, yes,
Yeah,
and
I remember.
Laila, and then they also started add the Sami to the. So all this I have taken from different sweaters, and most of the sweaters had also added the lice pattern, and often with a dog. And when I saw the dog was added, I was thinking they have a connection. And then I started going to symbol books to see if I could find the language, because it was a sort of whispering, and it was my eyes that could hear the whispering. And then I wanted to collect, and the collecting was like you will see on the wall. The star was more and more, and the stars came in all different combination. And if you take all borders and the stars, 1, 2 stars, turn, see 4, and another whole pattern, all over pattern. It's like a pattern bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So if you copy this and cut and glue, you will get a lot of different patterns. So I started this way to tell the story, and stories is many because you could turn it and see, oh, they have put the thumb on the wrong side.
Yeah.
And then they have cut it out and tried to move it
Fix
over
it.
to fix it. And all these stories came with the swimsuit.
Oh.
They had all this
That's
all
heavy when
over.
you come out of the
come
water.
out of the water. But many of them
Oh wow. look at that.
developed and they were fancy. But you couldn't go to town from Setesdal and buy this more haute couture in the fine quality, but you knit it yourself. Coming up of the water, it was like
Difficult. Yeah.
not
You
cold,
probably
but
stayed next to the water, not in the water.
it was heavy. There was and they did a lot of nice, more
Stylish kind
stylish,
of things. Yeah.
stylish. But also they made things themselves. So they cut out of an old sweater or a shirt, so they could. And they had a lot of different ideas because in 1934, Dior in France came with a short. And I mean with a belt and even the little zip in 34. It was fashionable. But ladies couldn't go to town from Setesdal and buy this, but they could be inspired.
Yeah, they could make it themselves.
And then they did go to the wool, dyed the wool, knitted as close as I could come, a little pocket, also for the belt.
And this one must have been in the water quite a few
Yeah, it's
times.
used
It's
many
used,
times.
it's
Yeah.
felted.
Nice. So I started reading these things and came over to all the variation of the Setesdal
Yeah.
style. And the Setesdal style had a lot of different models from industry, like here. It was not invented by the Setesdal. It was the woolen mills that took over. In Setesdal they used their traditional pattern, but so a book about Norwegian knitting design of Anniken Sibon came. And then they changed some of this cross and kringle, this Andrew cross. And then they added new.
Yeah. Both these are from Anniken Sibon's book? Or they
Yes,
are
it
in the
is,
book?
yeah. So, but that was one of the first things that was imported to Norway before Setesdal sweater. It was used for the naval army in Denmark, Norway. Knitted, and the Norwegian knitting industry copied the sweaters from Faroe Island, and then they ended up producing them instead of importing them.
This is what's known as the Icelander.
Yeah, and this is my ID that is referring to Jesus' blood drop. Because on the instruction for knitting this, it said that it must be red as dark red as possible.
Okay.
If it was another color, it wasn't accepted. But the first knitted sweater we know about imported, if I can follow the ads in newspaper, that was what they called Nordlandic nightshirt. This is from 1980. It's not old, but it's what exactly the same design as the imported silk knitted nightshirts that we got from Germany, England, and also back to the style that I called camisole, that was knitted in the style of the South European, from North Italy, Firenze, Florence. So the nightshirt, why this here, the grid, the word for grid is also the word for forgiveness. And the star was a victory star, the leading star, as I have mentioned before, and also the star of resurrection. So the nightshirt wasn't only the Setesdal sweater that was used to be buried in. This nightshirt, silk knitted nightshirt we know, was used to be buried in, like the children of Christian the Fourth, the king. The fourth, sorry. So the two of his kids was both buried in silk knitted nightshirts, but they had the Italian style instead of the North Scandinavian style. But the symbolism on the design was exactly the same. And I can see it's not the Setesdal style.
That's very different.
Absolutely not.
And the Setesdal style has come over to...
I think this is a nice combination also.
very often I've been thinking, when was the last day they used it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I also collected repairing, because you can see here how many times it has been repaired and knitted new sleeves.
That's also a
Yeah,
beautiful
they just
pattern.
used it and used it and used it until.
So to show what they could be used, because my mill was a quilting mill, making quilts and sleeping bag. And here you can see how they have made also a wool quilt before my mill. Here they have used man underwear.
Yeah.
What do you-
With the button.
yeah. In Norway they call it in military service Anna, but I think in American they call it Willy, no?
Yeah.
Willies.
Yeah.
Willis,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, this is cool. You have this.
Yeah, and even the button here in this place. And if we turn it, you can see they have used undershirt and parts of a Nordlandic nightshirt. But we think the word Nordland has nothing to do with the north of Norway,
No.
because Nordland was from Lindesnes, the south point of Norway, up the west coast.
Okay.
And the market in Stavanger, that was the Nordland market.
Okay.
And you can see in adverts that the Nordland market have Nordland butter, Nordland cheese, and Nordland sweater. So that was a term for this with the stars.
Okay.
So you can follow that in the newspaper. So the word we use for sweater today, like kofte, it hasn't been used in written language in 1800. That was nightshirt, so nattskjorte.
Yeah.
So, or nattrøye. So that can also confuse researchers.
Yeah.
But you can see how these animals come here. And also the repair of a sock. This part of a sock can maybe be 100 years older than the tip of the sock. And all the ways of repairing, it's many. And some has repaired and repaired and repaired and ended by giving up.
Yeah. Beyond repair.
You see, again and again. So,
This one has been very creative.
Yeah.
and when we come into 1900 up to Anniken Sibbons' book, she has a cousin, Else Paulsson. She also make a book, and she's also a good designer. And she made a lot of design for Husfliden, the Norwegian Craft Council. And knitters could go and not buy a pattern. They could pay like 20 øre, that is not very much, some cent, and then
20 cents, yeah.
they could knit and give it back.
Oh, so they borrowed it.
Yeah, so that was also so a lot of stylish, because the two ladies, Anniken Sibbon and Else Paulsson, they were educated and they knew about style. So today we can see a lot of people try to knit, but they forget about the style. So, And
Everyone can be a designer now.
yeah, but we come up to patchwork. Here it's the free folk art.
Yeah.
You can use the leftover, you can use unraveled yarn.
We did the blanket once in this style because my father said my grandmother was working with triangles.
Okay, okay.
So we made the big one
Yeah, and
in
maybe
this style.
she was inspired by some similar to this.
Maybe.
And the last thing they did after been using all these pieces, they could cut out pieces and then stitch it
Oh,
together.
that's so cool.
And they could stitch it as thick as a mattress, or they could do it as a quilt.
Wow, yeah, that's
So it's a way of using everything.
as much as you can, yeah.
Yeah. So when this is used and reused, you can shred it up. And what did I do? When I took over the mill, it was called Torridale Tweed, and I was shredding up different colors and spinning for different blankets, but I also made for making sweaters. So I mixed the colors, and I made hats and caps. So this is something that's left over from, because I had the mill until 2006.
And then you sold it.
And I sold the building,
Yeah.
but I still have the name Torridale Tweed. And this red, it's the quilt, or what would you call it in English, a duvet?
Duvet, yeah.
Yeah,
A quilt or a
duvet.
duvet? A duvet is probably the right word, yeah.
I made sleeping bags like this, and also for babies. I made blankets made on a jacquard loom.
Yeah.
And up here you can see some of the tweed I made, because all the colors is not dyed, but it comes from
It's come from
itself.
Yeah.
So I have the tweed here. So this is hand woven, but it's spun on the Museum of Skjølingstad Ullvarefabrik.
Nice.
But I have hand shuttled it. Yeah.
But it's good you kept all these pieces
Yeah,
and everything here.
So here, if you think it's about socks and it's underwear and it's sweaters, everything is in here. So that's, and this is what it was stuffed into the quilt.
So that's the shredded wool then that you
Yeah.
got from here.
So if some have seen my book, Everyday Knitting, the sweater in the front is not eaten by mouse or mice. It is just shown that I stuff a sweater into a machine and then it's shredded up to fiber. So the fiber here is shredded up by my machine.
So, Annemor, when you were looking through the pile, I mean, how many tons, by the way, did you buy of rags, the
Yeah.
rag pile?
When I took over the mill, it was about 16 ton. I paid for going to throw that away.
Yeah.
But I got knitting in bags from the costume every day.
Okay. So,
Because the orders was like this, that they wanted to have their own sweaters back in what they ordered. And if they didn't buy anything, they could get a note telling that they could buy later. So I get more and more and more. So the rag bags in my storing room, very often it had been old, or it had been water coming in through an open window, so it had been wet and wasn't really looking nice. But I was so curious that I had a container. This is trying to look like a container. So I was standing in the container with my bags, open them up, spreading out to see if it was things I wanted to save. So I saved like 1 ton or 1.5 ton. So that is 1,500 kilos maybe. In I don't know how many in the States that would be, but it was.
I don't know.
I have about 700 sweaters. I have about 1,200 mittens and gloves. I have 300 stockings and footwear, and I have 50 kilos with swimsuit in wool, and underwear and
Wow.
undershirt, I don't know.
Did you have any particular criteria? I mean, when you were looking at the stuff that you had, were you like, did you have any criteria for what you would keep and what you would throw away, or was it a random kind of selection that you did?
It had to do with my mood every day.
Oh, okay.
Some days I was fed up and throwing a lot away.
Yeah.
But some days I was collecting more than producing. So that had to do with my mood. But it is like when you are making a collection. In the beginning I was cutting out pieces. You can see on the other side here it's pieces. But then I realized it had no value just to have a piece of a sleeve. I wanted to have the whole sweaters. And when you collect, you see that, oh, this is in between. And I have a good memory, so I knew that I hadn't two of the same. So if I could see, I don't have this, yeah. And many of these look the same, but it's always a little tiny difference. Could be the stars that are different. Yeah. Also the edge and the way they were casting on, the way they have cast off. Yeah.
See, there's a lot of designers and knitters out there who should be grateful that you actually took care of this, because it would have been gone if you hadn't kept it.
So did you start getting curious? Like you were talking about the dogs, for example. You kept finding more and more and more pieces of knitwear with the dogs on it. Did you then think there must be some connection and start to do some, detective work, or how was that? How did that happen?
I had the storing rooms, and I knew that the owner before me, the first thing he got in was in the corner. And then he had just building up. And when he used some of his bag, he took the one that was closest to him. So he had never used was in the inner corner.
Inside, yeah.
And I had the idea that if I managed to go in deepest, then I could find the most interesting thing. And I also did, because he had also collected. He had also a sense of this, but he didn't tell me. But I wasn't that collector in beginning. Some film had asked me to get things for using for, what do you call it, costume
design.
Yeah, costume design. And I found a sweater for myself. I found sweaters for friends. But suddenly it was a scholarship coming up that should make a book about things that it was a narrow market. And I applied for the scholarship and I got it.
Yeah.
So that was really the pang start.
Yeah.
And then I started washing everything. It took a long time. I had people helping me washing and sorting, making photos, made a system, catalog system. So that was in the beginning, and that was in 1994 that everyday knitting came out. So I think I started in the end of 1980s doing this.
And you spent a lot of time making drawings of all the patterns by
Yes,
hand.
because we didn't have any computer at that time. I was sitting here in the museum with the magnifier and looking and then making the little...
So you were pretty much reconstructing patterns that you were finding in your rag pile.
Yeah.
Pretty much like Annika Sibben did in her time. What would have that been, 1920s?
29, yeah.
1929.
Was it published, yeah.
Yeah, she was one of the first to actually gather material from all over Norway. And then you kind of came in with your rag pile and followed that up with new information and new designs.
Yeah, I had the idea when the Olympic Games came that at that time we lost all this knowledge about Norwegian sweaters because it was Saint Pierre or what do you call it, Dobber, all these brands and it was so popular to get all this with same logo on. But after the Norwegian had the Lillehammer Olympic Games, then it started. You couldn't get enough Norwegian design stuffed into a sweater.
Yeah, I remember that time.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted one.
Yeah.
Before, all the good knitwear were hanging up in the cottages in the mountains
Yeah.
because people used it for skiing or not for normal life or daily life.
So, but my rag pile, I would say, represent 1900.
Yeah.
So,
So the whole
that is
the whole
100
century.
year. It could be like sweaters that is knitted in 1800, but I know this is knitted because I know he had knitted in his letter. So I know the man and when he was living. So this is knitted about 1880. Yeah, and but this had a style that called Torridale style, and he was living close to my factory, and the design is even older than Setesdal design. So,
how old would you date the design then to? I mean,
well, they say about 1824 about.
Okay. Oh, wow,
but
that's
I'm
pretty-
not sure. I know for sure it is 1843. That's for sure.
and Setesdal would be a little bit further, 1850 or something.
The documentation of a sketch of a painter, an artist, that is from 1848. But of course, this is not the first,
No.
but it was before the photography.
Yeah.
So we haven't any other sketches that tell it was.
So yeah.
But it's not written because they would call it a nightshirt. And it's a written story telling that now in Setesdal it is starting getting popular to your own to their own wedding only in the nightshirt. So I mean that was shocking.
It was shocking. It was a nightshirt. Come on.
As long as the nightshirt also was used as an underwear, should protect you in the dark, and it should protect you when you died.
Okay, Anne-Mor, now let's tell us a little bit about how this exhibition is organized and what do we see here?
Yeah, well, 2 years ago I was 70, and the exhibition here was a sort of gift from the museum to me.
Nice.
And also a presentation of parts of my work while I have been living here in Setesdal. So a lot of these things I had in my workshop in Ose and in an old log cabin building next to me in Ose. So they moved it up to here, and what I have tried to tell is how some part of design has moved from one sweater to another.
Oh, okay, that's very interesting.
So if we start like here, it's the lice pattern sweater from Setesdal.
Yeah.
A lot of different variation to show that in the everyday life, when it wasn't used as a part of the manfolk costume, it was used as, well, maybe the Sunday best. You could even go to the king in audience in the castle in Oslo. You could go with a Setesdal sweater. We had a very popular group, AHA, Morten Harket, and the guys visited the king in Setesdal sweater.
And he is family for you.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Close.
close. And I wanted to show that one part of a sweater has traveled from one sweater to another.
Yeah.
So when this lice is coming, we can go over to the style in Fana on the west coast, where we had the striped seaman sweater, and the lice moved in. And also the 8-petal star came over in all different shapes, and then it traveled to a lot of different variation. And when we go further, we come to the style of Torridale and Iveland, where I have my family, my grandmother's family, and all my foremothers and forefathers. They have also the star.
Yeah.
And the star, of course, they couldn't use unless they had been had their confirmation.
Okay.
So that was a sort of blessing when they should leave home. And the style here has been used for the round neck, the yoke.
The yoke.
So we can see how everything moves on, and some part is going, yeah. So it's always a little part of one pattern going to another. And the design was called Telemark, or parts in Telemark, Haukeli.
Yeah, I remember. We
Yeah.
have the pattern for that.
But then we are not in places where this has its origins.
No.
That's a name put by the designer
Yeah.
or in the design office. And over here is a presentation that wasn't in my place in Ose. It's made by the director of the museum. He has found pass photos from the Second World War when they needed identification cards. It's made 3 and 3 on each photos, but he cut it up. It's just a way of being very, what's it, rational? Huh?
Saving the
Yeah.
paper.
Saving paper and saving the job. But what's interesting is, normally if they were going to be taken off, like they said up here, they had their Sunday best, but not all. They took the best they had for every day, not the Sunday. So you can see they had knitted different style. He is the painter who I told that had the first open.
Oh, he's the one. Okay.
Yeah, that is him. And
I think
most of the other photos is from classes, and we can see how style changes, but also that Sete style continue coming up, being popular in like 10 years, and then it's popular again, 10 years it's popular again. But a lot of this design come from the book of Anniken Sibbon.
Yeah.
So we can recognize that. And the Fana style was also popular, but not as popular in Sete style. They had so much up here they could use from their own source. So,
but these pictures are so familiar.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, I
for
think we've all posed
people
like
who
that.
grew up in the 60s and 70s, they have
And
pictures
80s.
and 80s. They have pictures like this from school.
Oh yeah.
Everybody was wearing knitwear.
And the golf jacket was very popular up here. So they invented a golf jacket they could use for their folk costume. The golf jacket had a belt and pocket.
Oh, okay.
And that was really practical because women didn't use the lice pattern sweater. That was a man, and according to the Bible and the Book of Moses, you shouldn't dress as a man. I mean, that was the law.
Back then, yeah.
The law, Moseloven, the Book of Moses, was very, very strong up here. And the golf jacket, you couldn't think that any of these women up here was playing golf.
No.
And it was so popular that even a man, a neighbor, my neighbor, I didn't meet him before me, but he wrote in the newspaper that the golf jacket had taken over and was going to destroy the women's dress. And he gave a lot of negative things about the golf jacket. And at last he said, "Oh, what do the other boys mean?" So it was the opinion of the boys that should tell women how to dress.
The golfjacka, that was always without patterns.
Yeah, that was a structure here.
A little structure.
Yeah,
on-
but I have one over here on the wall with this pocket. And this is in my book, Sweater Heritage. where I had reconstructed it. So,
And this is a beautiful wall.
yeah, this is a part of what I call my mittens and glove carpet.
It's beautiful.
I used to have it in Os in Setesdal, where we have the waterfall,
Yeah.
Reiafossen, and I tried to make an illusion of the waterfall, so it was quite much bigger. They came out on the floor.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it was, but here they want to show pieces of my work. So very often it's goodies. So that's a little goodie bag of my waterfall carpet.
Do you have any?
And
Oh, sorry.
it's none of them that are exactly the same. If you could see the same design twice, it would be a left and a right hand. And many of them has been darned and mended, so you could hardly.
Yeah, you can
But
see the
on the
pattern.
other side, you can reconstruct the pattern and then you can pass it on. So that has been my way of also recycle to pass on. So a way of use, reuse, and let it also be like the spirit in the rag pile. It's also your own identity can be, or your own personality also can be knitted into it.
Yeah.
So you do it in your own way. So very often when I give a pattern, I do it not exact. I do it as a leading thread. And then you can add your own personality or your own spirit.
And do you have any, I mean, what's your favorite pattern of all the patterns that, I mean, I'm sure you love them all, but is there one pattern in particular of all these that we find here in our country? Would you highlight one of them?
I have one that I have special relation to because this is one of the oldest reindeer. And you will find the reindeer. It is on a Norwegian sweater, but the design you will find in a pattern book from North Italy, from just after the art of printing was come. So
Wow.
it's about 1500 something. And of course it was not done for knitting at that time. And I have also another one is from the first knitting book from Nuremberg in Germany. And that show that this reindeer and moose are not only Norwegian. So I had an exhibition called Wild Animals in my rag pile. And it happened that the king of Norway and the queen visited this exhibition.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about knitting, but the old king, he looked a little bit up in the roof and in the corner because of the way it was built and so on. But the queen, she was really interested. But so I came to the point. And this reindeer here, we are not as Norwegian as we think, because this reindeer comes from a book from North Italy. And then the king woke up and said, do they have reindeer in North Italy? And I thought, I cannot start a quarrel with the king. I cannot start arguing with the king. He is the protector of the World Wildlife Fund or something. So I was so stupid, I said, well, it could be another animal then. But I should have said, have we ever have lions in Norway? Because in the Norwegian symbol, we have the lion, and he had the lion on his bottom. So what is the Norwegian lion then? So, but if I am teaching over in the state, I always use the Hugin and Munin, the two Odin's raven. The one look into the past, the other one look into the future. The one look back to the mother country Norway, if they have the heritage in Norway, and the other one is for creating their new new life in the new country, in the new world. So this symbol, I think it's a sort of connection I like to introduce when I'm knitting, teaching knitting.
Thank you, Annemor, for showing us around in the exhibition. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. We wish we had more time, but we have a lot of people who we're going to be visiting in Setesdal, and our time is short. Now, luckily for all of our viewers, you're coming back to us for a new episode where we're going to be talking exclusively about the Setesdal sweater, the one that Arne and I are wearing here. We're going to learn more about that with Annemor, so this is not the last time you'll see her here.
And Annemor has made many books.
Yeah.
So you can see all the patterns that she has collected in her books. We will put a link.
Yeah, and Annemor, can you tell our viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and my name is Annemor Sundbø. That is the O with a slash.
Yes.
So very often some are not finding me, but I have a website called annemor.com. They will find me and presented my books. Most of my books are translated to English, so you will find not the two last.
Not yet, anyway.
Not yet, but they are 400 pages, so it can take time. But it's so many photos in, and now we have the Google Translate.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's no problem to find out what is written about.
Tells
Yeah.
also a lot of
Yeah.
stories.
But you still have a lot of books that are translated into English. We're going to put the website and Annemor's Facebook page link in the description of our channel or today's title. Go look at the description or go to our blog where we have notes from this episode and you will be able to click and find Annemor. And what I've understood, Annemor, is that the book that you, the one on Setesdal that you have in English is reprinted now.
Yeah.
And it's actually better to get on your website where it will be much cheaper than if you go to Amazon, right?
Yes.
saw the
And
price.
they can contact me on Messenger.
On Facebook.
That is the best.
Perfect.
Or they can use my email address. That is also quite good.
Yeah.
And Trafalgar, that is my publisher over there. For,
Our publisher too.
Yes, for the Mitten and Gloves book, Norwegian Mittens and Gloves. It is reprinted and issued now in August. So it's a new reprint coming out now in August from Trafalgar.
Perfect. We're going to put that in the description as well. So Arne, how about some formalities?
Yeah, if you like the episode, please put your thumbs up. And if you're a subscriber, put on your notifications because then you won't miss the episode. And put yourself on the mailing list because then you will have all the news before other people.
Yeah, and stay tuned because September 2021 is Setesdal's month. We are in Setesdal in the south of our country where Arne has his roots, or some of them anyway. And we are going to be highlighting a lot of people, very talented people within the crafts area. We're going to be talking to weavers, embroiderers, experts in folk costumes, silversmiths, and we also have a special episode with Kim Ristad, who is a very well-known singer who comes from here. So you really don't want to miss Setesdal's month here in September. Every Wednesday and every Sunday here at Arne Carlos.
And if you want to meet me, please come to Setesdal
Yes, of course.
and Setesdal Museum.
And the museum, and I don't know how long this will be in the museum, but maybe you watch this video in 2023 or something, then it's probably gone from the museum, but you can go to Ose, maybe.
Or it will travel
Or it will
maybe
travel.
somewhere else.
Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and remember to check out the links in the description as well as our blog. And we'll see you again very, very soon with some new great talented people. Bye.